I thank Excellency Tigist Hamid for officially inaugurating this event. I also thank Professor Dababarta for his opening speech. My name is Yodahe. I lead the Ethiopian National ID project. I've been leading it since 2021. Let me just run you through. Also, I'd like to welcome everyone. For us, it's just a 5-minute walk, but some people have flown 12-hour flights. I see our friends from the Philippines. A lot of people have come here, gathered here today. So I'd like to thank MOSIP as well, like Her Excellency mentioned, for having picked our city to host this event. So how did we come across MOSIP? In 2019, we were tasked with finding out a way to build a national ID project, a foundational ID project for Ethiopia. And then it was at the same time, MOSIP in 2019 was very new. We were part of some conference. I remember there was Ramesh and Arun. They were presenting the MOSIP architecture. For us, it was completely new, but it was interesting. We thought it's open source. It helps us build ID, because before that, it was just shrouded in mystery. What did it look like? How do we build an ID platform for our country? And we were very happy because we're engineers. It's open source. We did not even sign any MOUs. We did not talk to, we did not create formal relationships. We just went to GitHub. After the presentation, we went to GitHub, we downloaded it. I told my engineers, download it and try deploying it. And they were successful in deploying it. And that's one of the #1 qualities of a good open source. You can just use it. Enough documentation, enough knowledge base, you can just deploy it. So that's how we were introduced with MOSIP. Of course, after some time in 2019, 2020, we formally created a relationship, we signed MOUs. But before going full scale, what did we do? We said we will do a sandbox. We're not going to rely on some things that we have not really tested. So we did a laboratory kind of testing in 2019, 2020. We were happy with the results. Then we started slowly scaling it. First, it was 1,000 people, 5,000 people, then 100,000. So we slowly started increasing our targets, eventually and naturally, organically increasing the growth of the project. Right now, we have almost surpassed 4 million. And this was happening in the middle of COVID when we were first being introduced to MOSIP and we're launching our lab tests. With the testing, we've demonstrated a few things. #1, we can customize it ourselves. We can localize the language. We can create our own deployment architecture. We also proved that it was truly vendor neutral. There was no hidden background service or something that we had to pay for. So it was all the building blocks within MOSIP were open source, which we were happy with. In 2021, our program was reestablished at the Prime Minister's office. Our vision is to build sustainable digital ID and a digital ID ecosystem supporting all use cases for citizens and residents by 2025. We feel like we are well on our way towards this, realizing this vision. What are our implementation principles? Coincidentally, our implementation principles go very well in line with the digital public goods principles or with the principles that MOSIP follows. #1 is interoperability. ID in the traditional sense, it's just a card you carry in your wallet, but ID in the forward-looking sense, it's an identifier. It's being able to identify yourself in the system. So with that vision, interoperability is very important. Interoperability with other databases, with other agencies, with other initiatives. And #2, our vision was to avoid effort duplication. Ministry of Health wants to identify patients. Ministry of Education wants to identify students. Taxpayers, Ministry of Revenues wants to identify taxpayers. Each of them were doing their own effort to do their KYC. And KYC it's at the end of the day, it's more or less the same thing, even though it varies from sector to sector. A lot of KYC, there's commonality in KYC, so avoiding effort duplication is something else. Technology ownership, we are the kind of people that like our sovereignty, so technology ownership is important to us. So it's also another good principle that was aligned with what we really wanted. Another one is digital good. Just like there is something called digital good, there is something called digital bads. We had a conference called Digital Public Goods Alliance a few months ago here in Addis. So there was clear distinction. It was very obvious when we really go down into it. The way we roll out digital infrastructure, there are important principles that we believe we need to adopt. One of them is naturally avoiding vendor lock-in, because nothing lasts forever. You sign a contract, maybe 3 years later you want to change your mind. So you need both the client and the technology providers, of course, have to get the best out of whatever agreement. So avoiding vendor lock-in, technology sovereignty is important. So I see a lot of fellow African countries here who are developing their ID projects. Some of them are working with MOSIP. What we believe is interesting about our approach is we are not going for the entire national rollout before we start authentication services. We're doing it in parallel. We have a small number compared to the total population of 120 million people. We don't have a lot of people with digital IDs yet, but with the small numbers we have immediately started authentication services. Right now, we're not doing biometric authentication, we're doing OTP authentication, but for most of the use cases that we serve, we believe it serves the purpose, so that's a unique approach that we can be proud of. Currently, we are very closely working with MOSIP. We're migrating to the latest stable version, the LTS version. MOSIP gives us a lot of support because we have not yet hired an international SI. We are our own system integrator. So all our engineers go to them to get any kind of support and advice, whether it's in cybersecurity, deployment, migration to new versions. We had very interesting cases where we had to migrate millions of data, biometric data, from other legacy databases. One of them is Ministry of Revenues. The taxpayer identification program in Ethiopia had millions of fingerprints that we had to migrate and then make sure that it works perfectly with our system, the FIDA system. Another one is Ministry of Education. We migrated a lot of legacy data from 12th grade high school students, and all of that was not a small feat. It was a big challenge, but we're successfully doing it. Throughout our interaction in these 3-day conferences, most of my colleagues are here. We're very happy to share our journeys, our challenges, as well as our success. In closing, we'd like to see MOSIP become a model for other DPGs towards adoption and sustainability, which is also very important. We'd like to see it 5-10 years down the line becoming more and more sustainable. We want to be contributors, not just consumers of DPGs, which is also an important point. Consumers, not just consumers of open source, but also contributors to open source. Involving academic institutions, like we saw with IIIT, the success of IIITB. Academic institutions, Professor mentioned a few institutions that they are working with across the globe. We also like to see more academic institutions from Ethiopia and from East Africa and other regions within Africa successfully adopt this collaborative open source community, working on MOSIP and other DPGs. Our vision is to see the citizen in charge of their data. People talk about data privacy. The ID project is just a data controller. The data owner is the citizen, the resident is the data owner. So we want to see that that principle of data ownership, empowering the citizens, grow more and more as we roll out our digital project. We want to see more collaboration in areas such as INGI is an interesting project that's launched with IIIT Bangalore. It's a credential wallet. Credential wallet is interesting for us because once you have the ID layer, on top you need credential exchange to be able to make sure that other agencies can effectively serve the citizen in a seamless way. So we would like to collaborate on other, not just on MOSIP, but on additional projects as well. We have in Africa, the Africa Agenda 2030, the Continental Free Trade Agreement. We hope open source digital platforms such as MOSIP identification platforms can serve as a model for regional and continental integration, identity and beyond in Africa as well as within our respective nations. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that. You just heard from Mr. Yodahe Zemichael, the Executive Director of NIDP, or Ethiopia's National ID Program. He and his team are leading the charge to create and scale FIDA, Ethiopia's foundational ID system based on MOSIP. We're also proud to have NIDP as our partners in making this event possible. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everyone at NIDP for their support over the last few months. This could not have happened without you. We're very, very grateful for your help and support.